What's up, guys? Phil's Front here with the lifted mudding mower update number 6. I've got the motor in place, as you can tell. I bolted that in the other day just kind of for fun. I had nothing better to do, and I figured that was something easy I could do. And you guys all know how to bolt motors down, so I didn't think you would be interested in that. Today we're going to work on getting the fuel system in place. I went out and purchased a 2-foot piece of 1/4-inch fuel line. I got a small 1/4-inch fuel filter, which is nothing more than a screen and a piece of plastic. I got 4 hose clamps to hook it all up. And I got an on-off switch and a grommet to go with the on-off switch that actually works with the original tank for the lifted mudding mower, which is right here. So yeah, we're going to get this fuel system in place. And maybe I can show you a few tips and tricks on fitting the belt onto a pulley swapped lawnmower. So stay tuned for that, and maybe we'll start on the brakes. So the motor we've got installed here is a 14.5 horse Briggs & Stratton OHV with a cast iron sleeve. Don't mind the popping, the fire's just burning over there. But there's really no modifications done to this other than a small amount of head porting that we did when we initially changed the head on this thing because it was cracked and we put a new one on. So we slightly ported the castings in the head, but other than that there's really nothing done to this engine. It's a good strong runner just the way it is. So underneath the lifted mudding mower, you can see that motor already has a pulley attached, and that pulley's been on here for a while. I left it on there, and it's a 4-inch, and it's custom made out of the original pulley that comes on most lawnmowers. It has 2 pulleys on it. It's got the upper one, which is your transaxle drive, and then your lower one, which is your mower deck drive. And what I usually do is custom attach the mower deck drive pulley as the transaxle drive pulley, so you basically double the size of your front pulley. And if you have a welder, it's pretty easy to do. And actually, there's a YouTube user, goes by the name of Junkstar Builds, who's made a how-to video that basically covers the process to do that swap from the mower deck drive to the transaxle drive. And it's a pretty good detailed video. You can see this one's definitely a butcher job. Here's the one under my Murray mudding mower. You guys see this one. This is the black tractor. And this pulley's a little bit bigger than that one, but that one's a much better job. And that one's lasted me a plenty long time. But yeah, check out Junkstar Builds how-to, and you know, you can probably figure out how to make these pulleys. So a question I get asked from a lot of people is how to find out what belt size they need after they've pulley swapped their lawnmower. And when you change the pulleys, you obviously need to change the belt. So a real easy trick that I do is just go find yourself a piece of rope, usually about 1/2 inch to 5/8 will do, as long as it's relatively the same diameter thickness as your V-belt. You can see this one's pretty close. And basically what you're going to do is take this rope and you're going to wrap it around all your pulleys on the underneath of your lawnmower. And you're going to wrap this around as if it itself was a belt. And what you're going to want to do here is once you get it all wrapped around and hooked in like it's in the clutch and everything like it's an actual belt, you're going to want to let your clutch out so it's like you're trying to drive. And you're going to pull the rope very, very tight. And you don't want to pull it so tight that when you push the clutch in, there's no slack in the rope. You want the rope to slack a little bit. Now ideally, you'll do this with a rope that doesn't have a lot of elasticity, something that kind of, you know, doesn't stretch at all. You don't want anything stretchy like a bungee cord. You want it pretty stiff. So after you've got your rope on there and you've got what you feel like is roughly the right size and the right tension on your clutch and everything like that, you're going to take your rope and you're going to tie it in a knot. Another thing you want to make sure you're doing is when you're tying your knot in the rope is to make sure to do it on a piece of belt section that is straight. Meaning don't tie it around a pulley. Try to keep it in an area where the belt stretches from front to back and there's no interference, and make sure you tie the knot really tight. That's the best way to get the most accurate reading out of the rope. And check your clutch, check your linkages, make sure nothing's rubbing on your shift linkages. You're probably going to need new belt tensioners or retainers to hold your belt into the pulleys. And now what you've basically done is created a template for your belt. So you're going to have to go ahead and unbolt your rope from all of your pulleys if it's stuck in the clutch linkage or whatever like some of these lawnmowers do. And you're going to pull your rope out, and what you're going to have is this. You've got this rope and it's got the knot in it and it's your belt template size. And you could basically take this rope, this belt template rope that you've got, and take it to an auto parts store or a lawnmower supply store, and they can measure it for you and then get you the proper size belt. But if you're like me, you probably already have lots of lawnmower belts lying around. So take your piece of rope, and the same rule applies when you're measuring this. make sure your knot runs on the flat stretch. And this is why, when you pull it tight, you still get a relatively accurate reading as opposed to putting this on a corner where this rounds the corner a lot easier. You want to keep this in the flat areas. So what we're going to do is figure out which one of these belts is roughly the same size as our piece of rope. Now once you do that, the rest of it's pretty much straightforward. You put your belt on, put all your retainers on, and try it out. If when you push the clutch in, if the tractor doesn't stop, then your belt is too tight. If the thing doesn't climb hills or squeaks a lot or smokes a lot or doesn't really go at all when you put it under strain or tow something, then chances are your belt is too loose. A really easy way to avoid this is to build yourself a custom belt tensioner that you can adjust so you can take the slack in or out of the belt as it wears or as you break a belt and just use another junk belt that just kind of fits. That's what I do on my Murray off-road mower, and it actually works pretty good. Alright, we got our new belt on here, and it's actually the biggest belt I had, and it's the only belt I have this size, and it's actually in relatively good shape, so I'm feeling pretty confident it's a good belt. You can see I got just about the perfect amount of belt tension, and when I push in the clutch, I have a good amount of slack. So the next thing I've really got to work on here is getting some little tabs to hold the belt so it doesn't fall off the pulley, because you can see there's nothing there now. So that belt can just fly right off as soon as I push the clutch in. And I got to do that on the front as well. And actually, something really interesting I just noticed is right here. These are the old belt retainers for the pulley that I was talking about earlier, where the second mower deck pulley sits down here. Well, I'm thinking what I'm probably going to do is shorten them, flip them upside down, and slide them right into here and bolt them in. And I think they will work perfectly fine, just like that. So there we go. Got the belt retainers in place. You can see that one pretty much lines up perfectly. It's exactly where I want it. It's not too close, not too far away. This other one wasn't quite long enough to make the cut, so I ended up putting a little piece of air hose on the end of it, which brought it in just a little bit closer to that pulley, so I don't think the belt can slip off there. The rear belt retainers are pretty much in place. You can see it's just a bolt welded up there, and it just kind of comes down. I am going to have to remove the pulley to change the belt, but it's not a big deal because it's just a C-clip, and that won't be very bad. The front one is kind of nice that those are removable, because that's a bolt and these pulleys can typically be a pain in the ass to remove, so it's good to have those actually removable in the front. And my clutch already has a belt retainer built into it, so this belt system is all set to go. Back on all fours here, and I was going to actually start working on the electrical system because I want to mount the solenoid right there on this plastic fairing, because it's behind the gas tank and it's up high, so it's away from the water. However, I realized I don't have all the pieces necessary to wire up my electrical system. I lack the push button and the toggle switch. I have the solenoid right here, but it's not going to do me much good without all the other wires, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just mount this gas tank and get all the gas lines hooked up. This isn't going to be a permanent mounting because, as I will show you, the inside of the gas tank is pretty nasty, so it needs to be cleaned right out. Over here you can see we're starting to hook up some of the components necessary to complete the fuel system, and I've got the gas tank, and I got my little on-off switch, which is pushed into the grommet here into the fuel tank, and you just spin this sucker back and forth. It's kind of weird. I've never seen a fuel shut off like this, but I kind of like it. It feels nice quality. Fuel line, hose clamps, got my other fuel line right here. I'm basically ready to put this thing in, but like I said, there's not much point in permanently mounting it because I'm going to have to remove it to do all my wiring. But here it is, temporary. It's pretty much what it will look like. And here's a free little fearless front tip I'll give you. A lot of times you're working with these hose clamps. You don't want to use a flat-headed screwdriver, because a lot of times you'll end up stabbing yourself, because this is like the worst invention man has ever created. So what I suggest is, use your 1/4-inch drives. A lot of the time the problem is you can't find your stupid socket wrench, or ratchet I should say. You can usually only find sockets. So here's what I do. You've already got your flat-headed screwdriver, right? Well, just jam that son of a bitch in there and give her a couple twists. you can see that works totally fine, and it saves you having to find hundreds of tools. I do this all the time, and every time I show my friends I'm surprised they've never done that before. But yeah, there you go. Next on today's agenda, some brakes. And here's how I think this is all going to work out. I got my caliper there, and my rotor obviously, and my hub. And this isn't all permanent yet. This is still 100% just stuck the fuck in here. It's just, yeah. But I think I kind of got it set up roughly the way I think I want it. You know, it's pretty simple. I'm going to work the brakes off of the old, this was a hydrostatic lawnmower, and this was the forward and reverse control. So it was like forward, reverse, and it's got a little linkage thing down here, which you can actually see. I've got a little linkage in right now. So that, I'm thinking, is going to run down. This one's a little short, but I'm going to run it down to that guy right there, this linkage for the brake. So when you push this pedal down, it'll push this backwards, applying the brake pressure. Moving slowly, but we got the back tacked in right there. So I can now take this whole temporary setup right off of here, and my bracket will stay in place. And really, honestly, this is the only thing I really need to weld to the frame. The hub more or less hooks to this axle with a keyway, and the rotor down here bolts to that. This caliper floats inside of this bracket the same way it does in my racing lawnmower. And then you just have your linkage, which I have to finish custom making, but I can't do that until I get the caliper mounted. So we're almost done with the brakes, really. So I strengthened the front of the brake mount, and I used a piece of 1/4-inch steel, and it's welded in there, not on the inside, but all the way around on the outside. And that is some thick ass steel. I don't think that's going to go anywhere, so I'm pretty confident that's fairly sturdy. If not, I can always add an L bracket later, but I don't think it's going anywhere. Alright, with our brake caliper in place, you can now kind of line up our linkages here, and this is coming from the pedal. It's not really hooked up, but it's sort of in place. And you can see I've got the end cut off there. And I went ahead and custom made a second piece of linkage, you can see here. And it's basically old mower deck hardware that's adjustable. You can see the threads, so I will be able to basically adjust it by spinning it in or out, which I'm going to put it in the very middle of its adjustment so I can adjust it one way or the other. And I'm going to hook it up. And this is pretty much how I'm going to do it, is just essentially weld down the side and weld these two linkages together. And that will enable me to have brakes. I am going to have to hook up a return spring somewhere, but that's not a big deal. Red hot. My new linkage. I think we'll let that cool down for a little while. Alright, well, we're almost done here. You can see I got my linkages hooked up. So that's pretty sweet. I just got to figure out a return spring now. Springs are another thing that I tend to hoard a lot of, like belts. You can see I have many springs in here. Some I reuse, some I've bought and not used. A few of these are brand new still. Yeah, it's always good to have a bunch of springs laying around for stuff like this. So I think I got the brakes pretty much done. The linkage is all hooked up. It's adjusted where I think I want it. I obviously can't really test it right now because nothing is truly set up. I've even got a return spring right there. You can see that next to the frame. So when I push, she's a little noisy, so I might have to fine-tune that a little bit. You can see my linkages all working. So here's the idea. You got your clutch, and you push my clutch in without touching my brake. It's not that uncomfortable. I just have to bend my foot forward more. But now if I push my clutch in and I want to stop, I got brakes right there. And if I'm just in neutral, you know, I've obviously got brakes by themselves. Not that you would ever want to use brakes by themselves if you were in gear, because that would defeat the purpose of pretty much everything. But yeah, I think the dual pedal setup will be pretty neat. I've never really seen anything like this, besides the side-by-side pedals on some tractors. But yeah, this would be pretty neat to try out and see how it works off-road. So that's where I'm going to cut her off today, boys. We did quite a bit. Got the motor on there. That was already on there, actually. But yeah, I got the fuel system figured out. I got the belt system figured out. We got the belt retainers on there. Got the brakes pretty much figured out. So, I mean, that's a lot of stuff checked off the list that I needed to do. The steering's all good to go. The engine, I think, is good to go. I just got to clean that fuel tank out, maybe change the oil, check the spark plug, things of that nature. I still got to get a sprocket for the rear. I got to figure out a piece of chain. And, you know, maybe an inner tube for that tire. Geez, we're getting really close to being able to ride this thing, you know? I got to figure out the electrical, but really, I mean, we're almost there. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys liked the video. I had some fun out here today, and we'll see you in the next update.